Right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our update as regards BEE requirements in the fruit industry. I'd like to thank the PPECB and Hortgrow for partnering with Alternative Prosperity for this briefing session. Unfortunately, my colleague Johan Gilumir was going to join us, but he has an emergency that he needs to attend to. So I'll be hosting. My name is Eric Ackroyd. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Alternative Prosperity Advisory and Products, and I'm also a transformation specialist. Alternative Prosperity is a specialist advisory and solutions firm that specializes in broad-based Black economic empowerment and transformation strategies, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm joined today by Ilse Meiberg-Leenders. Ilse is project manager at the PPECB. Maybe Ilse, if you just wave your hand, then we know there's Ilse. Ilse will provide us with feedback and clarity as regards the PPECB's recent request from the industry for BEE certificates. I'm also joined by Mariette Kotze. Mariette, if you could wave your hand. Mariette is Group Operations Manager at Hortgrow. And Mariette will also provide us with some context around BEE in the pome and stone industry, and also talk about some of the challenges that the industry faces. I will then, after that, I will provide an overview of BEE legislation, also the Agri-BEE codes, and I'll also look at the benefits that BEE can bring to a business. And I'll look at trends in industry and also share some tips as regards the Agri-BEE scorecard. Just a few administrative arrangements. Sean is assisting us, and if you need any assistance, please just pop a question in the Q&A button. So the Q&A button is on the left side of your screen. Sean will then be in contact to assist as far as he can. If you could post your questions throughout the session in the Q&A box using that facility, and we will then, at the end of the session, we will then run through all the questions and answers and provide some feedback on that. All right. Okay, I'm going to start the slideshow. Mariette, Ilse, if you could switch off your cameras now, and then I'll...
No problem. Eric, there's just a hand from Raquel.
Okay.
Hi, Raquel. If you don't mind just posting your question in the Q&A function, please, and then we'll have a look at it in the meantime.
All right, I'm going to hand over to Ilse then.
Yeah, thanks very much, Eric. So a little bit of a background to the by now notorious letter. In 2019, we got guidelines issued for all state-owned entities that we needed to determine the level of BEE compliance within our respective industries. So we requested that customers kindly provide their BEE levels by the 1st of December. This information will be consolidated in an aggregated manner. So that means we won't put any personal or identifiable information in the report to DALOD. So we won't be saying that Ilse, who farms in Paarl on so many hectares with farm name, is this level. So we will just provide the information which is required, as in how many farms have 51% Black ownership, how many farms have women shareholding, what are the general sort of BEE levels within our customer base. So we're aggregating the information. The intent of this is basically just to establish a benchmark level of compliance within the agricultural export chain. We all know that quite often media will report on agriculture and the transformation or lack thereof. And right now, there is actually no benchmark in place. No one can say this is the level of compliance within the industry. So right now, we're just trying to get a benchmark level of BEE compliance within the agricultural export chain. That's all it is. We just need to find out where around are we in this part of the agricultural chain. So clients who don't have a B-BBEE certificate or an affidavit, their ability to export will not be affected. So you can still export even if you haven't got anything, it's fine. As can be seen in the slides which will be following, a verification audit does not necessarily always have to be done. For smaller businesses, affidavits can be completed. So you don't always have to go through the expense of an actual verification. So if we look at the BEE legislation, we have an amended Agri-BEE Sector Code of 2017, and there are definitions of the different types of businesses. So a qualifying small enterprise, which is a QSE, has turnover between 10 million and 50 million in terms of the amended Agri-BEE scorecard. And if you are a black QSE, you actually don't have to be measured. You can just complete an affidavit. And that can be found on the Department of Trade and Industry's website. And you can do that in front of a commissioner of oaths, normally a police station or a bank manager, attorney, clergy, post office manager. Just call to find out if there's a commissioner of oaths available. Go in, complete the sworn affidavit in front of them, and that's Bob's your uncle. So you can do this if you're at least 51% black owned or 100% black owned. There's obviously also the so the exempted micro enterprises, or the jargon is EME. So those are for enterprises with revenue less than 10 million. EMEs are automatically receive a recognition level of a 4. So sufficient evidence is of qualification as an EME is a sworn affidavit, and the link is provided below as well. So for black EMEs and QSEs, their automatic qualification levels are a level 1 for an EME and a QSE if they are 100% black owned, or a level 2 if you are at least 51% black owned. If an EME is less than 51% black owned, it's automatically a level 4. If a QSE is less than 51% black owned, it will need to undergo a verification audit to determine its level in terms of the amended scorecard. If a business wants a better level than what an affidavit can provide, like an EME receives an automatic level 4, but you actually believe you can do better, then you do have to go through a verification audit. And please ensure that you are audited by a SANAS accredited verification agency. Otherwise, the certificates are not going to be recognized. There are also cases that we have heard of that businesses or clients might require a business to have a certain level of BEE compliance. All large businesses, which are essentially over 50 million turnover, they do have to go through a verification audit. And over on the end of that slide, I provided the link for you to be able to check whether your verification agency is in fact registered by or recognized by SANAS. Okay, that's me.
That the request from the PPECB is to get an idea of what is the state of transformation in the industry, and that it is anonymous in a large way and it's aggregated, so there is no individual information, but rather an industry picture that is being formed. Right, I'm going to hand over to Mariette. Mariette will just take us through some of the challenges faced by the pome and stone stakeholders and industry. Mariette.
Thank you, Eric. Good morning, everybody. So from the Wardgrow side, we obviously welcome this type of an engagement, especially given the notorious letter from PPECB, and it also provides an opportunity for us to inform and to clarify, especially regarding the BEE legislation. So just a little bit of a background in terms of at the industry level where or how we deal with this. So the key role of the industry is to facilitate and enable, play a role in the environment for our growers and other value chain players to make sure that they can remain profitable, competitive and sustainable over the long term. So that's normally dealt with through various industry structures, horses for courses, and the Agri-BEE participation and input is specifically driven at the Fruit South Africa level. For those that's not familiar with Fruit South Africa, that is basically a platform where the majority of the fresh exporting fruit industries get together, and we deal with issues in Fruit South Africa that is not industry specific. So we all know that the BEE legislation is definitely not industry specific, but it is sector specific. So Fruit South Africa, as a key agri stakeholder, is part of the Agri-BEE Charter Council. And for my sins within Fruit South Africa, I've been nominated to serve on behalf of Fruit South Africa in the Agri-BEE Charter Council. This then obviously provides an opportunity for industry to provide input in terms of the codes, the legislation, the monitoring control environment as well. So personally, I've been involved in the Agri-BEE Charter Council for the last 18 months. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so as Ilse mentioned, the Agri-BEE Charter Council has been struggling since the inception in 2014 to provide a report on the status of the implementation of the codes within the agricultural sector. So it doesn't just relate to the fruit industry per se, it relates to all the entire agricultural sector. And that is basically a report on the status of transformation. And one of the main reasons is that many of the entities is not reporting as per the legislative requirement. And I must say this, I'm saying it tongue-in-cheek. A part of the reason is also that the Agri-BEE Charter Council has not yet been institutionalized properly. So part of it is the functioning within the Charter Council is also problematic. So over the past 2 years, we've been requested from a Wardgrow side to supply the Agri-BEE Charter Council with reports in terms of the status of compliance for our members. And that is clearly not our responsibility. It's just an impossible task to ask that we, on behalf of 1,000, in excess of 1,000 growers, collect and collate information and report on the status of each of these entities. But from our side, we can and we do report on the status of transformation relating to initiatives where we are involved in, and obviously to create a platform such as this where we can encourage and inform stakeholders within our industry. Another key aspect is because we are a statutory organization, 20% of our levies goes towards transformation. And at this particular point in time, there's no clear guidance in terms of how this transformation levy should be reported on, accounted for, and what type of recognition actually goes to the growers and stakeholders that's paying for it. So the Agri-BEE Charter Council is currently in the process of developing a guidance note that will be issued in terms of how these will be dealt with. From our side, obviously, the recognition should go to the growers for their contribution, and it should be certified and verified through the SANAS accredited auditor and or maybe from the auditing firm. So The other issue we've also picked up, especially in our industry, was that the amended code that was published in 2017 with a new scoring system basically resulted that some of the larger companies that is now qualifying enterprises suddenly either became non-compliant or they are now at a decreased level of compliance. So that basically sort of disincentivizes constructive initiatives, and it led to a number of frustrations due to this. Then the most important thing at this particular point in time, although it is not yet on the table, the BEE legislation or the sector codes also makes provision for enforcement guidelines, but obviously that can only be implemented once the level of compliance have been reported on, and that will or could have a potential impact in terms of our industry, and especially using the government levers such as water, trade, market, those types of issues. So these are basically the key concerns and challenges experienced from our side on Agri-BEE compliance. Thank you. That's me.
Thanks, Mariette. Thank you very much. So any questions that you may have for Ilse or Mariette, please just post them using the Q&A functionality, and we will then get to them at the end of our session. Sean's going to run a poll for us. So if you could all please vote on the following poll. What is the BEE compliance level of your company? The one option first is I don't know, or it is likely non-compliant, or it's definitely non-compliant. The second option is it's a level 8 or a level 7. So bear in mind, level 8 is the lowest level of compliance. Level 1 is the best level. The third option is level 6 to a level 5 or a level 4. And then the fourth option is it's a level 4 or a level 3 or a level 2 or a level 1. If you could please post your answers to the poll, and then Sean will just give us feedback on that.
Thanks, Eric. So it seems all the results are coming in quite nicely. So just to talk you through it, we've got a 37% on I don't know, 18% on between level 7 and 8, 15% between level 6 and level 4, and a nice 28% above level 4. So I'm going to publish those results for everyone to have a look. And yeah, I'm going to hide them, and then Eric, you're welcome to continue.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot. Sean, will you just remember those numbers? I've got a slide where I want to refer back to these numbers at a later stage, Sean. All right. Okay, so I'm going to just take us broadly through the legislation, or just touch on what are the relevant pieces of legislation. We're going to look at trends in other industries and what are the criteria that government set as regards BEE. I'm going to touch on what are the benefits of broad-based Black economic empowerment, and then how do we make this a positive aspect of our business, and then a couple of tips around how best or how easy or how effectively you can develop a BEE scorecard. The BEE Act of 2003 is the overarching piece of legislation. The BBEE codes and the sector codes are enacted underneath this legislation as secondary legislation. And the main objective of the BEE Act is to include historically disadvantaged Black people in the economy. South Africa is the country with the highest Gini index, which is a measure of the disparity of wealth within the country. And BEE is seeking to address this and get more disadvantaged people into the economy. And this is being done through the different elements of broad-based Black economic empowerment. And I'll run through those elements in a following slide. The BEE Act also provides that organs of state and public entities need to take into account certain BEE criteria when they are issuing licenses or concessions. and also when they are designing and implementing their preferential procurement policies. Another piece of legislation that talks to procurement is the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act, which requires organs of state and public entities to take BEE into account when there is a tender or when they are procuring. And in that instance, the legislation, the PPECB, as we refer to it, provides for smaller tenders that 20 points in the evaluation criteria goes towards BEE and 80 points goes towards price. And on the larger tenders, 10 goes to BEE and 90 to price. So we can see that it is enacted that government does consider BEE when certain decisions are made. The codes of good practice provide a framework for the implementation of the objectives of the BEE Act, and it also provides the mechanism for scoring the level of transformation through the different elements and the BEE scorecard. The Agri-BEE sector code focuses specifically on the agricultural sector, and it is tailored to the sector to ensure that the particular attributes of the sector are considered when providing for an implementation framework and a measurement framework for BEE and transformation in that sector. It is also applicable to all the role players in the agriculture value chain itself. The Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development is also responsible for monitoring and promoting transformation in the sector and to promote an inclusive rural economy. So that also then being a stakeholder when we're looking at broad-based Black economic empowerment. All right, looking at other sectors and talking to what we can see happening in these sectors. We see that many sectors have a requirement as BEE as a requirement in order to operate and to obtain a license or a permit or a quota. Examples are the mining industry, where mines require a license based on BEE criteria and permits to operate. Fishing quotas are also allocated with consideration of BEE credentials. ICASA broadcasting licenses, they require a 30% Black ownership in order to obtain and maintain a license. And then liquor licenses also awarded with consideration of BEE. Application of water rights in the agri sector, where there is a BEE consideration. And then in the public sector, organs of state and public entities, I've mentioned the PPECB, the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act, where there is certain BEE criteria that needs to be considered. We see in the pension fund industry, currently there's a voluntary dispensation in accordance with which pension funds can report to the Financial Sector Transformation Council and they can obtain certification. It is, however, voluntary at this stage, but the Financial Sector Transformation Council is indicating that if there isn't a good take-up of reporting, then it may become a mandatory requirement for pension funds to report on their level of BEE. We also see that with the applications for assistance from the DTI, a BEE certificate is required, and that in particular regarding exports, and the examples are the Export Marketing and Investment Assistance Scheme, as well as the sector-specific assistance schemes. So the trends we see in other industries is that government is using certain levers to drive BEE and transformation, and that they are making BEE a requirement in order to achieve certain objectives. This is an extract from the BEE Commission annual report on national status and trends of transformation. And what this is, it's a survey, or rather it's an analysis and summary of BEE certificates that have been reported to the BEE Commission and also to the regulator. whereby we can see the levels, the BE status levels within the different industries. So just to orientate ourselves on this, if we look at the total on the far right here, 3,350 entities were summarized. And if we look at their composition in terms of their levels, 24% of all entities across all the industries were non-compliant, 14% were at a level 8, and then only 7% were at a level 1. So if we look at the agri sector, which is on the far left here, 33.9% of all the agri companies, of the 156 companies, achieved a non-compliant level, and 23% a level 8. So that's in the region of 57% of companies that are a level 8 or non-compliant. And then if we look at the top level here, we've got a fairly low concentration of companies with a good BE status. If we compare this to other industries, the construction industry has a very high level of compliance. So many companies, more than around 50% of companies, are level 1 and a level 2. And just looking at the specialized sector, which includes organs of state and government entities, 43% are non-compliant. I think in summary, what this picture is telling us is number one, that the BE Commission has to survey and research the state of the industries around BE status, and the agri sector is lagging behind the average of all industries, but also lagging behind in terms of the absolute performance compared to other industries. So BEE does not need to be a negative. There are definite benefits that are available from broad-based Black economic empowerment. And the first is that of sales and marketing of an entity. So by having a good BE status and good BE credentials, a company can improve sales in the private sector. So retailers, if we look at Pick n Pay as an example, if we look at, let's say, a Clover, particularly the listed entities, they are looking to improve their BE status level. They need to report that to the BE Commissioner on an annual basis. They need to report it on a SENS statement annually, and they also report on it in their annual reports. So there's definite pressure on these retailers, on the listed entities, and they look down towards their suppliers in order to buy from companies with a better BE status level, and thereby they would improve their own scorecards. So not only do these companies look to move towards suppliers that have better BE status, but they also look to allocate more procurement to companies, suppliers that have a good BE status. So definitely a good BE status can translate into better sales and profits. Another area of benefit in the sales and marketing space is your chances of winning new business, be that tenders or be that greater allocations. So we've got new business success, and we've also got success in our existing business that we can achieve through a better BE status. And then sales to organs of state and public entities. With the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act, your BE has a definite impact on your chances of winning a tender or getting a bigger allocation or a purchase order from government. Another area that BE has a definite impact on is the human resources and your own productivity. And this is through the skills development element of broad-based Black economic empowerment, whereby it is focused on improving skills and knowledge. And the interventions that are embarked on can also be partly funded by a sector education training authority. So there's a funding aspect. There are the efficiencies that can be unlocked through better skilled and educated employees. And that also leads to better quality of service and better quality products. A further aspect of BEE is employment equity. And together with the skills development, this could lead to a higher level of motivation of employees, and therefore unlocking efficiencies and service and quality levels. Another aspect of BEE that has a clear benefit is that of supplier development and enterprise development. And through supplier development, we can develop stronger and more sustainable suppliers so that you strengthen your supply chain and that you also have more committed suppliers. Enterprise development, which is the assistance of companies that are not suppliers, but that could be in the pipeline to become suppliers, can also benefit the company, whereby you build up your pipeline of future suppliers, and also these would then be Black-owned suppliers that would also assist on the procurement scorecard. So definitely, if we design and implement BEE correctly, there's a definite business benefit. And also, if we market and we use our BEE status correctly, we can unlock value for the business. So as players in the agricultural industry, you are probably doing a lot of things right that are in the framework of broad-based Black economic empowerment. And examples are that you are doing existing training, skills development, bursaries, education. So all of those aspects have a place on the BEE scorecard, and they just need to be recorded, and that goes onto your BEE scorecard. You are probably already assisting Black contractors, and that falls within the ambit of supplier development. Farm schools, bursaries, all of these aspects go onto the socioeconomic development scorecard. The Agri-BEE sector code is quite wide in its definition of socioeconomic development, and it includes housing, water, electricity, and sanitation as contributions that are eligible for socioeconomic development and that can find their way onto the scorecard. The same goes for medical clinics and transport, and then sports development programs, but also the provision of sports facilities. So all of these items are the kind of initiatives that the BEE scorecard and the Agri-BEE code would like to see being implemented, and that we can record on the scorecard. Right, we've got another poll that we would like to run. Sean, if you could assist with this. And the question is, which BEE element is the most challenging for your company? And we've grouped them as ownership, management. Now, management includes employment equity, skills development, procurement, and then enterprise and supply development, and lastly, socioeconomic development. Sean, if you could just...
So the results are coming in nicely. We've got 66% of the audience saying ownership, 13% saying management, 5% saying skills development, 5% saying preferential procurement, 5% enterprise and supply development, and 2% socioeconomic development.
Okay, thanks a lot, Sean. I'm going to speed up my presentation a little bit just so that we've got more time for questions and answers. This is essentially just a visual summary of what Ilse ran through. And basically, this slide is just showing that if you have revenue of under 10 million and your ownership is less than 51% Black, you get a level 4 affidavit. If your revenue is between 10 and 50 million and you don't have Black ownership, or you've got under 51% Black ownership, you need to do a verified scorecard and certificate. If you have revenue of below 50 million and you are 51% Black or more, you do an affidavit. And then all other entities that fall outside of that need to do a verified scorecard and certificate. So this cuts out red tape for smaller companies. You don't need to go to the expense and the effort to do a rating. You just do your affidavit if your revenue is under 10 million. Right, briefly, a bit of background on what are the different elements in the BEE scorecard. The first is ownership, and that is owning of shares and voting based on those shares. Management control and employment equity measures the composition of Black people and Black women in your management levels, that being junior, middle, and senior management, as well as the board of directors. Skills development is skills development expenditure on interventions for Black people. Procurement is the level to which you buy from suppliers with a BEE level, and the better the BEE level of your suppliers, the better your procurement scorecard. Supplier development and enterprise development is contribution to facilitate the development, sustainability, and financial and operational independence of 51% Black-owned companies that have revenue of less than 50 million. So these are through contributions of grants or direct cost support or loans and so on. And then socioeconomic development in its broadest term is a contribution to facilitate sustainable access to the economy. Right. This is the Agri-BEE scorecard. Just an overview. We've got the qualifying small entity or QSE scorecard and the large entity scorecard. So they are different scorecards. And on the right here, we've got your BEE status matrix. So this says that we look at your points that you score on your scorecard, and we then translate that into a BEE level. So as an example, if you've got 76 points, you will be a level 5 BEE status. All right. Looking quickly at the skills development, enterprise, supply, and socioeconomic development elements, which are areas where we can make real meaningful impact to the business. And by embracing these elements, we can really develop the scorecard and get the return on investment from a business perspective. Skills development, the areas are your existing training of employees, and also to turn that training towards the areas where you really make a difference in the business. To do a needs analysis on your employees and to know what kind of training you want to do. The scorecard provides for learnerships, and these learnerships actually result in a competency. So not only theoretical knowledge, but it also results in the ability that is formally assessed. So at the end of the learnership or the apprenticeship, the person is able to do something as opposed to just knowing something. And in these cases, we can count the full salary spend, and we can also host these learnerships with a service provider so that they would not be in the employ of the company, but they would, or not physically in the company, but they would be hosted in a simulated work environment. And through this, we can create an employee pipeline. Skills development also recognizes skills spend on companies or on individuals outside of the business. Enterprise and supply development. This recognizes contributions to small Black-owned businesses that could be subcontractors, transporters, other sole proprietors. And the contributions don't need to be in cash. They could be non-monetary contributions, such as free rentals or the use of equipment, or it could be management time or employee time that is spent assisting a qualifying business. On the socioeconomic development side, we've mentioned that we have farm schools, bursaries, housing, also recreational facilities, also retirement and funeral schemes that are not part of the remuneration package. And in that event, they can be counted on the socioeconomic development scorecard. So all in all, yeah, we have a scorecard where we've made certain assumptions and we've said, okay, if you've got a reasonable composition in junior, middle, and senior management, you've done the full target amount of skills development, you've got a reasonable composition of suppliers, and you focus your efforts on enterprise supply and socioeconomic development. Then it's possible to get to a level 7 before necessarily making changes to top level management and ownership. The discounting, that is a provision in the codes where if you don't have certain sub-minimums on the ownership, the skills, procurement, enterprise or supply development elements, then you drop down by 1 level. All right. Okay, that's basically in summary and some food for thought. As we sit here and one looks at the whole BE developments, the first step is to know what is your BE status and to perform a scorecard assessment. The second step would be to look at a transformation strategy that has real business benefits, that not only addresses a BE scorecard, but that also addresses the business needs and the business objectives. So there's definitely a way to add value to the business and the lives of your stakeholders and employees through a good BE strategy. All right. I'm just going to go through the questions that we have so far. All right. I'm just browsing through the... So one of the questions we have here is, please, can you confirm the correct affidavit that needs to be used? So the correct affidavit is those that are presented by the DTI on their actual website. These affidavits are updated on a fairly, let's say, on a periodic basis, and it's important that one uses those affidavits. An accountant letter is not acceptable, and it is the South African National Accreditation System that looks at these affidavits and certificates, and they put the pressure on the BE verification agencies that they can only use these correct templates. All right. Okay, what is the classification of revenue? If we received amounts as a branch of a foreign entity, it is not our revenue. We transfer the money to them. Do we have to be BE compliant? So my answer is probably going to be a little bit cheeky, but the revenue is revenue that the financial statements define as revenue. So it would be what the auditors recognize as revenue. But to be a little bit more specific, when we're talking about pass-through revenue, or where you have invoiced on behalf of somebody else, and you are passing that straight through to the third party, and it does not get recorded in your income statement as revenue, that can be excluded. So we would just look at the revenue that is recorded in the income statement. And in this case, it talks to a branch of a foreign entity. If you now often a branch of a foreign entity is also a registered company. I think it's section 28 or something. But we would look at the financial statements of that entity and recognize it as such. And the auditors would have treated pass-through revenue as not being revenue. So it would then only be on that net amount. Okay, and then the last question we have here, the presentation will be shared. So we will share that presentation with everybody that is registered for the webinar. If there are any other questions, please could you just post them. I've browsed through everything, and I think I did pick up on all the questions that we have. And then, Sean, you've got a last poll that we will run just right at the end now. But I would like to thank you for your time. We've set aside 45 minutes, so we are on time.